The Nazi war machine was a force of unprecedented power and brutality. It propelled Germany to early victories in World War II, overrunning much of Europe with shocking speed. Understanding this machine requires examining its components, its successes, and ultimately its failures. This essay will delve into the structure, technology, strategies, and key figures that made the German military such a formidable force in the early years of the war. It will also examine the logistical systems that fueled the war effort and analyze the impact of major campaigns. The German military, known as the Wehrmacht, was divided into three primary branches: the Heer, the Luftwaffe, and the Kriegsmarine. Each branch had its own hierarchical structure, with clear lines of command and a rigid emphasis on discipline. The Heer, the largest branch, was responsible for ground operations and was organized into divisions equipped with tanks, artillery, and infantry. The Heer played a crucial role in executing blitzkrieg tactics, which emphasized rapid movement and surprise attacks to overwhelm the enemy. The Luftwaffe provided air superiority and close air support for ground troops, making it a vital component in the Wehrmacht's strategy. It was not only responsible for bombing campaigns and dogfights, but also for reconnaissance missions that gathered crucial intelligence. The Luftwaffe's advanced aircraft and experienced pilots made it a formidable force in the skies, while the Kriegsmarine focused on naval warfare and disrupting enemy supply lines. The Kriegsmarine's U-boats were particularly effective in the Battle of the Atlantic, where they targeted Allied shipping convoys, aiming to cut off supplies and weaken the enemy's war effort. The surface fleet, although smaller, also played a significant role in naval engagements. This tripartite structure, while seemingly straightforward, was often plagued by inter-service rivalry. Each branch vied for resources and influence, sometimes hindering overall strategic cohesion. The competition for limited resources, such as fuel and ammunition, often led to conflicts between the branches, affecting their ability to operate effectively as a unified force. Nevertheless, in the early years of the war, the Wehrmacht's combined arms approach, where different branches worked in concert, proved devastatingly effective. This strategy allowed for coordinated attacks that leveraged the strengths of each branch, creating a synergistic effect that often caught the enemy off guard. The integration of air, land, and sea operations showcased the Wehrmacht's ability to execute complex military maneuvers with precision. The Nazi regime invested heavily in military technology, producing some of the most advanced weaponry of the war. Their relentless pursuit of innovation led to the development of groundbreaking machines and tactics that would change the face of warfare forever. German tanks such as the Panzer IV and the Tiger were renowned for their firepower and armor. These tanks were not only heavily armed but also featured advanced engineering that made them formidable opponents on the battlefield. The Panzer IV, for instance, was versatile and could be adapted for various combat roles, while the Tiger tank was feared for its thick armor and powerful gun. The Luftwaffe boasted advanced aircraft like the Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighter and the Junkers Ju 87 Stuka dive bomber, which terrorized enemy positions. The Bf 109 was a versatile fighter that excelled in dogfights, while the Stuka dive bomber was infamous for its precision bombing and psychological impact, often equipped with sirens to instill fear as it descended upon its targets. German submarines, or U-boats, prowled the Atlantic, sinking Allied shipping and disrupting supply lines. These stealthy vessels were a constant threat to Allied convoys, employing wolf-pack tactics to overwhelm their targets. The U-boat's ability to operate undetected for extended periods made them a formidable force in the Battle of the Atlantic. These technological advancements, combined with effective tactics, gave Germany a significant edge in the early stages of the war. The integration of these technologies into their military strategy allowed for rapid and decisive victories, often catching their enemies off guard. The combination of superior equipment and innovative tactics created a powerful and efficient war machine. The speed and firepower of German tanks, supported by air power, enabled them to outmaneuver and overwhelm their opponents. This approach, known as blitzkrieg or lightning war, relied on fast-moving, coordinated attacks that aimed to quickly incapacitate the enemy. The synergy between ground and air forces was a key element of this strategy, allowing for swift and devastating assaults. However, as the war progressed, Allied production capabilities eventually outpaced those of Germany. The sheer industrial might of the Allies, particularly the United States and the Soviet Union, allowed them to produce vast quantities of war material. This overwhelming production capacity, combined with strategic bombing campaigns that targeted German industry, gradually eroded the technological edge that Germany had enjoyed in the early years of the conflict. Central to the Nazi war machine's early successes was the Blitzkrieg Doctrine, a revolutionary military strategy that transformed the nature of warfare in the early 20th century. This Lightning War strategy relied on speed, surprise, and concentrated force, aiming to overwhelm the enemy before they could mount a coherent defense. It involved a coordinated assault using tanks, infantry, and air power to break through enemy lines and encircle opposing forces, creating chaos and disarray within the enemy ranks. The Blitzkrieg emphasized mobility and decisiveness, aiming to achieve swift victories and avoid protracted conflicts that could drain resources and morale. This approach proved highly effective in the invasions of Poland, France, and the Low Countries, where the rapid advance of German forces caught defenders off guard and led to quick surrenders. The speed and ferocity of the German onslaught left defenders reeling and unable to mount effective resistance, often leading to significant territorial gains in a matter of days or weeks. However, the Blitzkrieg Doctrine had its limitations. It was not a foolproof strategy and faced significant challenges when the initial shock and awe failed to break the enemy's resolve. It relied heavily on surprise, favorable weather conditions, and the enemy's inability to adapt. When these elements were not in place, the Blitzkrieg could falter, leading to prolonged engagements and logistical nightmares. Faces of Fury Hitler and his inner circle. The Nazi war machine was driven by a ruthless ideology and the ambitions of its leaders. Adolf Hitler, the Führer of Nazi Germany, held absolute power and exerted significant influence on military strategy. His generals, including Heinz Guderian, Erwin Rommel, and Erich von Manstein, were skilled tacticians who implemented his vision on the battlefield. While Hitler's leadership was initially seen as a strength, his strategic blunders and interference in military operations ultimately proved detrimental. His decision to invade the Soviet Union, for example, stretched German resources thin and led to a protracted and costly conflict. Behind the front lines, a vast logistical network fueled the Nazi war machine. German factories churned out tanks, planes, and munitions, while a complex system of railways, roads, and horses transported men and material to the front. The Nazi regime also exploited the resources and labor of occupied territories to sustain its war effort. However, this logistical network was strained by the sheer scale of Germany's conquests. As the war progressed, Allied bombing raids targeted German factories and infrastructure, disrupting production and hindering the flow of supplies to the front. Furthermore, the vast distances involved in the Eastern Front posed significant logistical challenges. The Nazi war machine achieved stunning victories in the early years of World War II. The invasion of Poland in 1939 showcased the Blitzkrieg's effectiveness, while the conquest of France in 1940 stunned the world. The Battle of Britain, however, marked a turning point. The Luftwaffe's failure to defeat the Royal Air Force prevented a German invasion of Britain and exposed vulnerabilities in German air power. Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, proved to be a strategic blunder of colossal proportions. The vast distances, harsh weather conditions, and fierce resistance of the Red Army sapped German strength and ultimately led to the Wehrmacht's demise. Despite its initial successes, the Nazi war machine was not invincible. Its reliance on speed and surprise made it vulnerable to prolonged conflicts and attrition. The German economy, while formidable, was ultimately unable to match the combined industrial might of the Allies. The Nazi regime's ideology, based on racial superiority, also proved to be a weakness, alienating potential allies and fueling resistance movements in occupied territories. As the war progressed, shortages of manpower, resources, and dwindling morale began to plague the German military. The relentless Allied bombing campaign crippled German industry, while the Red Army, fueled by patriotism and a desire for revenge, steadily pushed the Wehrmacht back towards Germany. The Nazi war machine left an indelible mark on history. Its ruthlessness and brutality resulted in millions of deaths and unimaginable suffering, while ultimately defeated, the machine's early victories and technological innovations forced the Allies to adapt and innovate in turn. The war's legacy serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of totalitarianism, the horrors of war, and the importance of international cooperation in maintaining peace.